In the last video, we talked about states of matter and solid, liquids, and gases, and we looked at the particles of a solid, a liquid, and a gas and how they behave and how that related to temperature. So a phase change is when a substance changes from one state of matter to another. So when changes from one state of matter to another. And for all substances, this happens under different scenarios. So based on the temperature, but also the pressure, will affect what state of matter a substance is. So temperature is more common. We looked at that in the last video. When we heated something up, we could see that it was starting to have more energy and, going from a solid to a liquid. But also pressure affects the state of matter that something is in. So the two things that can cause this change in state is a change. This triangle right here means change. So change in temperature or a change in pressure. Okay, and let's go ahead and just look at, we have either a solid, liquid, or gas. So we know that going from, some of them we'll be pretty familiar with, right? So going from a solid to a liquid, right? So like going from ice to water, that is melting. Okay, and opposite of that, if we're going to go from a liquid to a solid, so if we go from liquid water to solid ice, that is freezing. Right? Now, if we go from a liquid to a gas, there's several different names that we can use for going from a liquid to a gas. And I'm going to tell you all of them. So we have boiling. Okay. Also, we can go from a liquid to a gas by evaporating. Okay. But we also can call it vaporization, so turning into a vapor. So all those three terms, they're not interchangeable, they're not all exactly the same thing, but they all describe when a substance goes from a liquid to a gas. And we'll be more specific about them in later units. Okay. Now, if you go from a gas to a liquid, this is when you condense, or condensation. Now, the ones that we're a little less familiar with is going directly from a gas to a solid, or a solid to a gas. So going directly from a solid to a gas, not melting through a liquid phase, but going solid straight to gas, is called sublimation. I'm going to turn it like this so I can write it. Or subliming. All right? And then going from a gas directly to a solid, we call deposition. Okay, so sublimation sort of is like dry ice, right? If we take dry ice out, it's a solid and immediately turns into a gas. So these are the phase changes that you should know. Let's go ahead and take a look at, I have a simulation here. Let me reset it. Okay, so you can see that, again, I have that solid substance like I saw before, and there is a pressure meter here, but there's also a temperature meter. So, if I heat this substance up, I can see that it starts to change from a solid to a liquid and then, eventually to a gas. So by adding or removing heat, I can cause a substance to phase change from one state of matter to another. Now, let's just reset. Now let's look at pressure, right? So I keep the temperature the same, but if I add pressure, so I'm going to add pressure by sort of pushing down on this container, right? And if I push further down, I can see that by adding pressure, I can cause that substance to turn into a liquid or eventually into a gas. And if I add enough pressure, it'll blow the top off my container. Okay, so just keep in mind that both temperature and pressure can affect the state of matter and affect whether or not something goes from being a solid to a liquid to a gas. And in the earlier units, we're just going to be dealing with temperature, but later, as the semester goes on, we'll look more into how pressure affects things.